So what is a saturated fat, right? So a saturated fat is a type of triglyceride, a chemical structure which has no double bonds. And that double bonds, in other words, means point of unsaturation, right? So you can always detect whether or not something is saturated fat when it's at solid room temperature. It can remain solid. So other examples of saturated fats would be butter, tropical oils, whole milk, and also red meat. Now, the British Nutrition Academy suggests that only 11% of your total calories of your daily value should come from saturated fat. According to the British Nutrition Academy, and we take the 11%, well, this 11% actually comes out to being 220 calories. Now, let's look at the American Heart Association and what they recommend. Now, the American Heart Association recommends about 5 to 6% of your total calories coming from saturated fat. And if you wanted to break this down, this would be up to 120 calories. Now, as usual, there's always another controversy within the health community. One person says it shouldn't be this much, the other person says it should be this much, the third person says it shouldn't be that at all. The American Heart Association recommends that you have a limit of only 13 grams of saturated fat that you consume per day, while the British Nutrition Academy suggests that you should up that to only 30 grams of saturated fat per day. Now, I don't know if you've ever read the back of a nutritional label before, but saturated fats are pretty much almost everywhere, and when you're trying to hit a certain target, it can be easy to exceed or to go way below that amount. Now, since there are many studies to show the results of consumption of saturated fat, many of those studies actually show that the negative effects of overconsumption of saturated fat, such as cancer growth, increase of LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol, inflammation, and also mental decline. Now, what these studies don't tell you is what the ingredient they're using as far as conducting the research for the saturated fat. So you have many of these studies conducting research for saturated fats using a vegetable oil as opposed to anything coming from an animal source. What many people don't realize is that not all saturated fats are the same, not by any stretch of the imagination. So you have saturated fats, which are in the sugary sweets, the goods, the bakery stuff. You also have the saturated fats in what you would find outside in the fast food, coming back home from work or going to. And don't forget the saturated fats that are included in the vegetable oils, which you'll find that in the greasy foods, yes, that are outside in the fast food, part of the world, but also can be easily made inside your house because you don't know which oil to use. Now, that is completely different from a more health-conscious diet that incorporates more fats, the healthy fats. Okay, we're talking about whole milk, we're talking about dairy, and we're talking about red meat. And preferably, if you can afford it, grass-fed red meat. That's where you can get more of the bang for your buck. And don't sleep on the coconut, which is high in saturated fat, which is fantastic for your health on a daily basis. See, these are the good fats that you should be more aware about and should gravitate more toward, as opposed to going toward the unsaturated fats, the bad fats, the greasy fats. Now, there are 10, and I will say it again, there are 10 saturated fats that exist. And 2 of the most optimal saturated fats that you can consume would be stearic acid and palmitic acid. I try my best to pronounce it. Palmitic acid. I knew I'd get it right. Anyways, now both of these acids you will find predominantly in your red meats, your animal fats, and also in your dairy. Now, what does this all mean? Now, does this all mean that saturated fats are bad for you? Well, I don't think so. But then again, does this mean that saturated fats, all of them are good for you? Well, not necessarily. But then again, it depends. What does it depend on? It depends on which saturated fat you're targeting, what type of fat you're going for, where it's coming from. Don't forget this, too much of anything can be a bad thing. Like, take for example water. Too much of water, you drown. Just think about that for a second. Now, I'm not a scientist, but however, I am your average daily Joe, average Joe consumer, I go to Walmart every once in a while like you, I'm a normie. And since I'm like you, I also know it's like facing the extreme mountain of difficulty when it comes to losing your weight. However, I do remember, and I still do know this, since I still do this today, that switching from something as simple as the oil that I consume my food in played a tremendous role in the speed of my weight loss. A tremendous role. And without me changing something as simple as the cooking oil, and the types of foods that I consume, and where I consume them, and where I buy my food from, majority of the weight I would still try to get off today. It'd be almost an endless cycle. But switching from cooking my food in canola oil and switching that toward using something that for some reason Americans, we believe that butter is the devil when it's not. For some reason, Americans, who are majority of us, or a good portion of us, are morbidly obese, we have demonized butter by, in many accounts in the past, and still due to some, constraints. Meanwhile, you have other places like France. They eat nothing but butter, and look, well, how thin they are, majority of them at least, compared to us. I hope this video helps. This information certainly helps me out, and I will be back to update you with more information. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below what you think. Let me know how I can improve the video. Thank you for watching, okay? Take care. Bye.